Hi guys, welcome to the video summarising the second year of grief after the death of a partner. I want to just welcome you and also welcome all of our new members to WAVY. Over the last 6 months we've had about 50 new members join the group, so I want to welcome all of our new members. For those of you who watched the first support video that I did about the first year of grief will already kind of know my story, but I'll go over it briefly for you. I was just 23, I just literally turned 23 years old when my wife died in March 2012. She'd been critically ill for about 4 weeks and she ended up passing away at the end of March of that year, and I discovered that there wasn't an awful lot of support for very young people going through this experience after about 9 months into my grief journey. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to try and set up a support group, which turned out to be WAVY. I'm now 25 and it has been 2 years and 2 months since my wife passed away, and a lot has changed in those 2 years and 2 months, and I want to go into a few of the things that I've experienced and maybe give a bit of hope to some of you guys out there. Obviously I'm not going to talk too much about my experiences. I'll try and keep this fairly general, because obviously we all are individual. What I experience may not necessarily what you experience. As far as for me, as far as the first year and the second year, they were completely different experiences, completely different, and yeah, it was almost like the first year and the second year was almost like it was just a completely different experience. But there was loads of differences that I experienced in the second year that I did not experience in the first year. One thing that people have been talking about a lot recently is this second year dip, and what that refers to is immediately after people get past the first anniversary date, they tend to go into a very, very low point. And often this is because most people in that first year, it's so hard to survive, all they focus on is getting to the first year and don't focus on what comes after that. So therefore when you get to like 13, 14 months, a lot of people experience a dip, ranging a big dip ranging from about 2 to 4 months in duration after the loss, after the first year anniversary. So I have to say I did experience this. I didn't experience it instantly though. It was kind of like I was in a bit of a dream world up until about 13.5 months, and then around mid-April I seemed to drop, and I dropped for quite a significant amount of time until around 17 to 18 months. So I did experience this, and I know that a lot of people have experienced, not everyone, but I know a lot of people. I would say about 80% of people that I've spoken to have experienced this second year dip in one shape or form. So it is very common, and I think a lot of people also, once they get past, because the first year anniversary is such a focus, the reality of the loss doesn't quite hit you, because you're so focused on getting to the first year anniversary that when you get to the other side of it, it's then that the reality hits, because you no longer have that goal in your mind. I've got to get to the first year, I've got to get to the first year, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. So your mind is less preoccupied with that, so it has to face the reality of the loss. And that's why for some people, obviously, the second year can be more challenging than the first year. As far as special dates, in the second year, obviously you get through your firsts in the first year and stuff like that. In the second year, the dates are still hard. For me, I found the second, Jotty's second, my wife's second birthday harder. I found it harder the second time around, and I think the reason why is because her birthday is at the start of May, which is, in the first year, would have only been about a month after the loss. So I think the reason that was harder for me was because that there was such a short space of time between her death and her birthday that I was in far too much shock to really understand what was going on at that point in time. And you may find the same for you if, for example, your partner dies about 3 weeks before your birthday or something like that. You may find that the first birthday is not too bad, but then the second one's a lot worse because your mind actually can process it at that point. So I found her birthday harder, her second birthday harder. The second wedding anniversary was a lot easier. And it was, I found a lot of, that would have been about 15 to 16 months after, and I found a lot of resolution, and I turned a bit of a corner on the wedding anniversary. I didn't feel angry like I did the year before. I felt more at peace during the second wedding anniversary. The only date I would say, the only second point that I would say was harder was probably the second Christmas. I think every other date was pretty much easier. Every other special date, the second Valentine's Day was easier. My second birthday was a lot easier. I actually enjoyed it the second time round. Even though she died 3 weeks after my birthday, I found the second birthday a lot easier. So the Christmas itself, when it came round, wasn't too bad. I enjoyed it a lot more. But the actual build-up of Christmas, particularly the month of December, the second time around, was very, very challenging, and I felt very depressed. It hit me a lot more. I didn't want to get the decorations out, whereas in the first year, I got all my decorations out. I did all of that, and looking back, I think now, during the first Christmas, I was in a little bit of a dream world. I didn't really know what was going on. I was still in a lot of shock. And I didn't realise I was in shock. I thought, because I was grieving, so I thought, because I was grieving, because I was upset, how can I possibly be in shock? Because I'm not avoiding the loss. But I think you can actually be processing loss, but still in shock. And I truly believe the majority of people are in shock for a lot longer than they really believe. So I found the build-up harder. Christmas Eve was harder because I guess that's kind of the build-up. Christmas Day was a lot better. Boxing Day was a lot better. For some reason, New Year's was very, very difficult. I don't know why, but it was very, very difficult. I went out with my mates, had a good time, but I felt really upset when I came back. Luckily, my friend stayed over, so he kind of like, I was upset, and he kind of, supported me and stuff. But I felt very, very, very depressed for some reason. Second New Year. As far as the second anniversary of her death, I can't really compare them because they're so different. The first time round, I was very sad. The second time I was still sad, but I kind of had a bit more. It felt like it was a point of seeing how far I'd come as well. I kind of could tell that I'd resolved a lot of things and moved forward a lot. So, as far as the seconds, in my personal experience, I found it found them a lot easier to deal with. You may find them harder. We're all so different. But as I say, as I keep stressing, I think for the majority of people, once they've done one of the dates once, it should be easier the second time round. One question somebody's asked, and this is the question that I get all the time. What is harder, the first year or the second year? And obviously, there's no true answer for that, because for one person it might be the first year might be harder, for another the second year might be harder. For me, I can only tell you my experience. It's a bit of a strange one. When I was in the second year, I thought the second year was harder, but now I'm out of the second year by about 2 months. I can see that the first year was truly a lot harder. And I think the reason why the first year was harder for me was because the pain was a lot more intense. I didn't know if I was going to survive. And there was no point of where I felt like I'd resolved anything. I felt like I wasn't moving anywhere. I felt like I was just getting through the days. I was getting through the pain. But I didn't feel like I was moving anywhere. It was kind of like, and when I got to the first anniversary, it felt like I just survived, but I've not really moved anywhere. And the pain was just so intense. And it was quite constant as well. Like, I had a few times where I had relief, but it was pretty constant in the first year. The second year, the first half of it was very difficult up until around 18 months. Then for the first time, around 18 months, I had a point where I felt like I'd actually got to a point of resolution. I felt like I turned a massive corner, and I felt like, okay, I can actually live with this loss. My life's not over. And I had that up until around the 20 months, and then I went back down again. But I never got that in the first year. I never got that moment in the first year. Obviously, the reason a lot of people find the second year harder is because reality hits. For me, reality did hit, but I didn't think the pain was as intense. So even though it felt more real, the pain just didn't feel quite as sharp as it did in the first year. I still think a lot of people think you completely come out of the dream phase after the first year anniversary. I personally didn't. I felt like I was in that dream phase until around 18 months, and then I began to slowly wake up. I remember I went on holiday with my friends. I came back and I felt like I was slowly starting to wake up out of that fog. But I truly don't feel like I woke up completely out of that fog until around the 2-year mark, and now I feel like I've landed back on planet Earth completely. Whereas everything, even in the second year, sometimes it seemed real, but then sometimes it seemed a bit dreamlike as well. I still think the second Christmas seemed very dreamlike. I look back on it now and it feels like a bit of a dream. So, yeah, the answer to that question, there isn't really. I mean, obviously it's going to vary from individual to individual. I mean, you may find that often the people who find the second year harder are the people who've had a shock loss, like a sudden shock loss, because they tend to go into that shock phase for maybe about 4 to 6 months, and then it doesn't hit them until about that period of time, but then it still doesn't quite fully hit them until the first year, and then they have a really tough second year. For me, it hit me instantly. I mean, I was crying at the funeral. I was I never really went into full-blown denial. I grieved. I felt the pain instantly, and I think that's probably why I found the second year a bit easier. Because I kind of knew what was going to. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that one day she might die. I didn't expect it to be when she was 23, obviously, but I thought maybe she could die when I was 40, or I had the feeling she was. We kind of knew that she was going to die before me, because she had a terminal condition, but we didn't know when. It was a case of we didn't know when. So I kind of not expected it, but I kind of had it in the back of my head. But it was still a massive shock. But I felt it all instantly, and I think that's one of the reasons why I found the first year a lot harder. But if you are in the second year, if you're stuck in that second year now and you are finding it harder, don't feel like there's something wrong with you, because that is very common, and because that's the thing about grief. A lot of us worry because it's not a straightforward journey. You can go from feeling good one day to high the next, and you can actually feel sometimes worse as time goes on than you did a few months before. That sometimes makes us think that there's something wrong with us, but that is completely normal. And I still get times even now where I feel like I'm right back to the beginning, and it's been over 2 years. I mean, I still get that now, and it's been quite a long period of time, so that is completely normal. And that just brings me back to my final point, actually. One of the questions that I got is my experience of the third year, and obviously I've only been in the third year for 2 months. The third year feels like it's a year where you kind of have the compulsion to try and start rebuilding your life. You feel, it feels to me like the first 2 years are all about survival and kind of feeling your way through everything, and now it feels like, okay, I've got this compulsion to try and rebuild my life. The first month of this third year, the first month and a half, has been very difficult, because again, I think even in the second year, sometimes you often don't look at what's after. At least I didn't look at what was after. I didn't know what to expect after the second year anniversary. So, but I think the third year, for most people, report that the third year is substantially easier to get through than the first 2. Although you do get the odd person who finds the third year extremely difficult and more difficult than the first and second. But that's normally when you grieve. If you're the sort of person who maybe your grief is, maybe it's been avoided in some way, or maybe you've got like a complicated form of grief where you haven't felt it until a much later time. Otherwise, most people find the third year substantially better than the first 2. So, yeah, I think the problem is, as well, is we always feel, I know for me, I always feel worse. I always think what I'm going through right now is worse because you're actually living it. And I think that's why on our bad days we struggle to see. We only think about how we feel at that time. So, for example, I felt crappy a week ago. I had a crap day around a week, a really low day. And I thought, I feel worse than I've ever felt before. But truly, it wasn't that bad. It's just because when you're in it, when you're living it, at that moment you think it's the worst thing ever. But really, it's not as bad as it was. And I know that. I can see that now. So I think that's maybe why a lot of people, when they're in the second year, they might think it was worse, like the days were worse than the first. because they're actually in it, and that's how I felt. I felt until I got out of that second year, I felt that it was worse because I was still living it, but it wasn't. Now I can look back, analyse it. It wasn't. So, like I say, keep in mind we're all different. I can only tell you from personal experience what's happened to me. I've tried to keep it as general as I can. And I just want you to all remember, especially people who are stuck in the first year or who are going through the very early stages of this loss, particularly the first 18 months, keep the faith. It does get better. It changes. It's the sort of thing that isn't going to go away, obviously, because we all truly loved our partners. But it does get better, and you learn to adapt to this new life, I guess is the best way of putting it, and that there is light, and it's not an artificial light, and I think that's what's different. Once, for me at least, now I'm further out, it feels like real light. It's not, whereas I felt like I had little glimpses of light in the first 2 years, but it was really felt more like artificial light. But yeah, just keep the faith and just keep pushing on, and I truly believe we all can be happy. Once again, I don't think there's any situation in life that you can't overcome, and I think we can all be happy again. So keep pushing away. I mean, I know at times it seems absolutely like you just can't do it anymore, and I've been there many times, and it does suck. But normally when there's a low day, when you have a low day, there's a good day around the corner. And things change over time. That's the one thing I've learnt more than anything. Like, the one thing to tell yourself when you're in that moment, things change. It's temporary. If you feel crap, think about in another month you might feel better, or even your life situation, like in another year's time, your life situation might be completely different. This is the here and now. Live in the moment, and just keep in your head, it's temporary. Things will change. The loss will always be there, but you will learn to live with it, and it will be alongside you forever. And in some ways, I think it's better having to learn to live with it than forgetting about it, because if we forget about it, that means forgetting about our partners, and I'm sure none of us want to ever forget them. You want to keep them close. I guess you want to keep them close to your heart. So learning to live with the loss is in my opinion at least, the ideal goal. Anyway, thank you for listening, and thank you to all of our new members. And I'll see you soon. Thank you.